This week on Jerusalem Dateline, the war in Ukraine rages on. We have frontline reports from CBN's George Thomas and an interview with the Christian who stayed behind in war-torn Kyiv. Plus, analysis from former Soviet dissident Natan Sharansky and a look at Israel's preparation to receive Ukrainian Jewish immigrants. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. As the world watches, Russia's advance in Ukraine continues with aerial bombardments and ground forces. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has become a behind-the-scenes go-between, talking to both Ukrainian President Zelensky and Russian President Putin by phone. Speaking at an annual cyber-tech conference, Bennett called on major world players to get Ukraine and Russia to the negotiating table fast before it's too late.
We in Israel have had our fair share of wars, and I can tell you one big lesson. Wars are easy to start and very difficult to finish. Things are looking bad on the ground right now, but it's important to understand that if world leaders don't act quickly, it can get much worse. I'm talking about untold loss of life, total destruction of Ukraine, millions of refugees, and it's not too late.
Inside Ukraine, the city of Lviv has been a refuge for many fleeing the Russian invasion in other parts of the country. CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas is on the ground in Lviv, where he shows us how the city is mobilizing, both with humanitarian aid and for war.
It's the sounds and sights of a city that's on a war footing.
We have food, we have medicines, we have all kinds of different things, and we sort them into categories here.
At Lviv's historic art palace, now a massive aid hub, hundreds of volunteers use every inch of this 32,000 square foot structure to store critical supplies that fleeing refugees and military personnel might need in the days ahead.
We are all united, and now everyone is helping, and we're doing everything we can.
In one corner, food. In another, clothes, sleeping bags and blankets. Here, medical supplies and toiletry. And in this spot, sacks of potatoes. Lviv has been a safe zone since Russia's invasion. Tens of thousands of people are pouring in by the day, and residents are stepping up to help.
And now the most awful thing is that we are getting accustomed to them, to all this situation. First days, all these first waves of shock, it's like settling down, and now this is the reality, and this is just the job we must do.
Yet there's a sense of urgency here. You feel it. You see it. On the streets, Ukraine's National Guard is out in force. At sensitive locations like police stations, hospitals and government buildings, security has been beefed up. If the Russians were to move on Lviv, one of their first targets is going to be City Hall, right here in the heart of Lviv. And so already authorities have put up the sandbags and erected these concrete barriers just in case. CBN News filmed as military instructors were teaching civilians how to handle weapons and man checkpoints.
These are the prepared Molotov cocktails, and they are actually ready for use. And these bottles, they are prepared to be transported because they are covered here.
They have a seal on them.
Yeah.
Taras Masalko does public relations for one of Ukraine's largest breweries. So basically to fill up the bottles and use them to put gasoline and all the stuff that's needed. The company has ditched beers for producing petrol bombs to set fire to any invading Russian army.
We need to be prepared, and we need to be sure that we can normally defend our houses and our cities.
Back at the art palace, volunteers work around the clock. This is the largest humanitarian center with 8 others scattered around the city.
People are really exhausted. They're coming and they're saying, okay, I can stay for like 5 hours, but they're working for 12 hours.
George Thomas, CBN News, Lviv, Ukraine.
In Ukraine's war-torn capital, Kyiv, Some residents chose to stay put in their city despite the threat from the Russian army. I spoke with Alex Semenchuk. Alex runs a production company who actually translate Jerusalem Dateline into Russian. Alex, thanks for joining us there in Kyiv. Tell us the situation right now where you are.
At this very moment, when we're speaking, Russians bombing us, and its missile just fell right very close to the house where I stay, and whole house shaked. Not right next to, but very close. The earth was shaking. It is really close. They are bombing us, and I'm in the middle of air red alert. Kyiv is protecting itself, and our military people stand against this invasion. What to say? We are asked by mayor of Kyiv not to go out of the houses unless there is a special need, and only when the air red alert, we go to the bomb shelters and stay there, and sometimes for 3, 4, 5 times a night, several times, many times a day. Yeah. What to say about whole the situation? Anyway, you can buy food. There is a lack of drinking water. We are a little bit short of drinking water, but yesterday one shop gave drinking water for free.
Alex, can you tell us how is this affecting the people of Ukraine?
As far as I can see, and I saw, and I touched the people rallied. I would say people like never before. People rallied, and people started being very kind to one another. People I saw, like in one street shop, which didn't accept credit cards, only cash. People collected for unfamiliar old woman just money and bought her food. Because she didn't eat for a couple of days. So people have become kinder and more attentive to each other. They rallied. That's what I say before. Yeah. Many people who didn't leave the city couldn't leave the city. They are older, as like my mother. My mother was born in 1940, and she survived the Nazi invasion. She couldn't think that she would live to see the next war. Wow. Yeah.
We know, Alex, that your mother is 82, and she doesn't see very well. You're there in the middle, and you're being.
She's visually impaired. Yes.
Right. Tell us how people can pray for you, your mother, and the people of Ukraine.
My church and my pastor said, if you are asked what to pray for, to every my friend, my close, the people in my Christian family, I say the only 3 things: peace in Ukraine, invaders go home, and may Jesus prevail. And I know, and we all know, that this war is the war of God. And Jesus is fighting for us. God is fighting for his, inheritance. When we worship him, when we trust him, I know we pray to him, worship him, and we will see how he will fight for us, and he will overcome.
Amen.
His glory will prevail.
Well, more than 1 million people have fled to neighboring nations, and many of them are passing through the city of Lviv. As CBN's George Thomas shows us, the Christian community is making sacrifices to assist these refugees.
It's a wrenching scene playing out across Ukraine. Husbands like Pavlo forced to say goodbye to his wife and 2-year-old daughter Maria as they boarded a bus here in Lviv bound for Poland to escape Russia's invasion.
It's terrible because actually it was so unexpected, and nobody was prepared to this situation.
More than 600,000 people have fled so far to neighboring countries. And so many of them are arriving here in Lviv, in the western part of the country. And I mean, you just look, they're coming with just a suitcase, a duffel bag. And my understanding is that Ukrainian men are not allowed to board the trains from Kyiv to Lviv. Anybody between the ages of 18 and 60 is not allowed to get on the train because the government says they need them. They need them to fight.
This time we will have the volunteers and we will do what we can do here in Lviv.
Not far from Lviv's main train station, 3 ladies who escaped the fighting this week and never knew each other before this moment
cheese, some sausage.
Found shelter in Anastasia Mochar's tiny apartment, which she shares with her brother.
I don't know how long I'm going to be here because it's really hard to make plans.
Anna Tikhanchenko is from Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, where Russian forces bombarded City Hall Tuesday.
It's really hard to listen to the news and see the photo of neighborhoods, the places where I hang out. To see them destroyed is so sad.
Like so many residents here in Lviv, 22-year-old Anastasia Mochar, a Ukrainian Christian, decided to open her home to the young ladies, even though she didn't know them.
This is totally normal for me, because I was raised in a family where our home was open to other people. We were always helping people who were going through difficult times.
This past weekend, Mochar's church turned all available office space into temporary rooms for refugee families.
There will be a lot more refugees coming. We are not sure what's going to happen next, but the Christian community here stands ready to help, provide shelter, and anything else we can do.
The United Nations is warning the ongoing exodus could grow to as many as 5 million in the weeks ahead. George Thomas, CBN News, Lviv, Ukraine.
Coming up, former Soviet dissident Natan Sharansky tells us why Russian President Putin thinks he's the strongest leader in the world. Iconic former Soviet dissident Natan Sharansky has a perspective on the fighting between Russia and Ukraine that comes from having lived there for decades, often at odds with the regime. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl spoke with Sharansky, former head of the Jewish Agency, who explains what drives Russian President Vladimir Putin.
You are from the Ukraine. Tell us, what is this war all about? What does Russian President Vladimir Putin hope to achieve?
Look, I was born in Ukraine, in Donetsk, then it was called Stalino, and lived there for the first 18 years of my life. That was a place where there was a lot of Russians, a lot of Ukrainians, and a lot of Jews. And we lived in the atmosphere of anti-Semitism. We have the Russian leader who decided, being for 20 years at power, he really decided that he is the strongest leader in the world. All the other leaders, Bush, Obama, Merkel, are coming and leaving, but he stays forever. And he decided that he has to bring back to Russia the same type of greatness which it had before. Ukraine is the biggest and the most important part of his new empire. And here he starts the war. It will not finish with Ukraine. It challenges the very basic principles of the free world. And I think if the free world will not show the same determination and stubbornness as he shows, the free world is in danger.
So were you surprised by the timing of this?
His timing always dictated by the weakness of the free world. In 2014, President Obama showed unbelievable weakness when he declared that Syria's use of a chemical weapon will be the red line, and then Syria used the chemical weapon and he did nothing. That's the moment when Putin understood that he can have a base in the Middle East. That's how this base in Syria emerged. And then he decided that he can go to Crimea and declared that the second next natural part of Russia is Donbass. So for 8 years, it was like a semi-war situation in Donbass. And now that he decided that, again, he faces a weak American president, or at least he believed, And he really believed, and he created this picture in his head that Ukraine is not the real country, it's not the real people, they are part of Russia, they will not resist, and the West definitely will not want. The world is watching, the world is very sympathetic to Ukraine, the world is praying, but the world permits him to conquer Ukraine. I think it's a terrible message to this dictator.
So what do you think the West should be doing right now? What kind of assistance should they be offering to the Ukraine?
So as a minimum, the free world has to demonstrate one united front to demonstrate to Putin that really every inch of NATO territory will be protected. In fact, that on the borders of Ukraine, there must be already NATO demonstrating its strength, and at the same time, sanctions have to be as effective that Russia will feel with every week how it's becoming weaker and weaker. And in fact, nobody is enthusiastic about this war, and more and more people don't understand why they are involved in this war, and more people are angry that Russia becomes isolated economically, culturally, in every aspect. And this type of pressure has to be consistent and strong, and the free world has to speak in one voice.
Up next, Israel working together with Christian groups to bring Ukrainian Jews home to Israel. Israel is working with Christian organizations to help Jews trying to escape Russia's invasion of Ukraine. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more on that story.
Israel is scrambling here and in Europe to pave the way for thousands of Ukrainian Jews to immigrate to Israel.
We are in touch with different communities and leaders of these communities, rabbis. We helping them to organize buses to the border, and then in the border we meet these buses and we help them to cross this border to accommodate them in these neighboring countries.
Ukrainian-born Roman Polanski, a regional director with the Jewish Agency, faces a chaotic task.
The situation in Ukraine is the men ages 18-60, they cannot leave the country because they're drafted to the army. And it creates a situation when the family could be split and they have to make their choice. Wife with children and with elderly parents can go beyond the border, but men should stay there.
Complicating the effort is that many people didn't bring family documents and some don't have passports, although the Jewish Agency has been able to mitigate some of the challenges.
These people come sometimes with only 2 bags and with cat or dogs, and they need everything. They need clothes, they need medicine, they need food. We are trying to provide them with all our help, including, by the way, also psychological help and medicine help.
Working with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, the agency has established centers near borders in Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Moldova.
Christians all around the world who help us, different organizations, both financially, but also they have their people in the field, in Ukraine and in other countries, and we rely on this chain of support as well.
Author Tom Hess is most concerned about those not returning to Israel.
There's 200,000 Jews there. I believe that God has shown that the destiny for the Jewish people is back in Israel.
In his well-known book, Let My People Go, Hess issues a clarion call to Jews and Christians alike about the importance of Jewish people returning home.
God says the destiny of the Jewish people is back in Israel in the last days. Half the Jews in the world are already back, but he says he's going to bring them all back, not leaving any behind.
Given the rush right now to rescue those in Ukraine, much work and uncertainty lie ahead.
Still ahead, a roundup of some of the most emotional and memorable moments of the Ukraine-Russian war out there on social media. From emotional goodbyes to Christians praising God in the subways, take a look at some of the most stunning moments from the Russian-Ukrainian conflict on social media.
Ой, у лузі червона калина похилилася. Життя за людей віддав, книгу життя нас записав. Мы хотим мира. Мы хотим мира. святую, червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну розвеселимо. There's going to be peace in Ukraine. There's going to be peace in Russia.
Well, those are some of the amazing scenes you can see right now on social media. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. CBN is dedicating a special live prayer event for Ukraine with George Thomas, who is on the ground right now in Ukraine. It's Saturday, March 5th at 11 a.m. East Coast time. Check cbnnews.com for details. Hope to see you there. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.